Howdy, folks. Thanks for tuning in. So, I got something on my mind that I think is just cool. Not political. But, if you rewind to when my wife and I got together, one of the things that I've always wanted is a fun car. And I wanted either a Mustang or a Corvette. Now, Corvettes in what you'd get dollar for dollar, like if you're comparing, a base Corvette to a Mustang GT, year to year, mile to mile, you're spending a bunch more money on a Vet than you are a Mustang. Now I realize you're getting a bunch more car, but you're also paying a bunch more insurance on that car. But anyway, I wanted one or the other. And she said, I'll make you a deal. I'm like, what's that? She's like, after I get a nice family car that we all fit in comfortably and can go places together and do stuff, you can start looking for your toy. Well, anyway, I'm very fortunate to have it in more ways than one, because when the Focus decided it was going to poo the bed, I had this thing sitting in the driveway ready to go. So it did come in handy. But that's not why I bought it. I bought it just for fun. And it's a fun little weekend cruiser. Just, run around on the weekend and go out just cruising for no other reason than the fact that there's a road there and I want to go down it. Well, anyway, when it... So, rewind with me a little bit to February of 2020. And my wife had gotten a job. She was an essential, and we had we had started putting a little bit of money back in the bank, being a dual income family, and she finally got to go out and buy her mommy mobile. Nice enough vehicle for everybody. I don't mind driving it. It fits everybody comfortably, including my mom if she wants to ride with us. We've got four-wheel drive for if the roads are bad. Got room for the dog if we decide to take him somewhere. Just a all-around good car. Well, stimulus money come in. Unemployment came in for when I was laid off. I was getting ready to go back to work. One night I'm sitting around scrolling through Facebook Market and Craigslist, just seeing what's out there in the Mustang world. And she's like, you've been doing that for like 2 months now. This has been in May, and we bought her a vehicle in March. She's like, you've been doing this for 2 months now. Just go ahead and buy something so you'll stop. And I told her, I'm like, whatever I get, it's gonna be a project. Like, I'm gonna want to do stuff to it. She's like, I know. But I'm like, you say that, but I'll go do that. She's like, I know. Go do it. And so I shot off a couple messages to a few different people. Sorry, folks, I'm parched. And those never materialized into car deals. Either distance, schedule, got sold out from under me. There was something about it I didn't like. I was a little picky on what I wanted. I wanted a stick coupe, unless it was one of the 97 to 98 Cobras, and I'd settle for a convertible. But I wanted a stick, no matter what. Well, anyway, so like some cars, they wouldn't have pictures of the interior, and it wouldn't list the transmission, so I'd ask and find out. There was one guy, he was out of state, and I couldn't manage to arrange, a central meeting point with him where both of us had a driver to take us down and bring us home and all that stuff. Then there was another guy, I planned on meeting him like right after his shift, and he sold it right out from under me. Like, I'm sitting at home messaging him like, hey, I can be there in an hour. You said you'd be off at this time. He's like, it's already sold. So anyway, a buddy of mine messaged me just randomly, and he's like, hey, at work, and we got talking. He's like, oh, so you're looking for Mustang? He's like, yeah. A buddy of mine literally just posted about that he's selling his on Facebook. And I'm like, really? So he sent me the ad, and it was a little more than I wanted to spend, and frankly, it was a little more than I had at the bank at the time. But it was something that I wanted, and I'm like, well, it's really a nice car, and it's newer than I was expecting I'd be able to get, and better miles than I was hoping to get. But it's just a little outside my price range. Like, really? Well, I'll tell you what, I've got a pile of money sitting in the bank not doing nothing, so I'll lend you this much, and I'll see if he'll come down this much, and just pay me back when you can. Awesome. Made sure it was okay with my wife. She said yes. Like a day or two later, the car came home. And I've loved it. I've put, for something that's just a weekend toy, although it's been doing the work commute quite a bit, I've put a boatload of miles on this little car, and I've enjoyed it. I've had it, 8 months now, and I've put 8,000 miles on it, and the majority of it was just on the weekends up until the Focus broke. Well, anyway, so the other night I got cruising around online, and I'm looking at speed parts, which I told my wife I wanted to do, and she's okay with, so long as the hobby doesn't interrupt us being able to afford taking care of everything that we've already got to take care of, like kids and mortgage and electric. And I found out that one of the speed parts places offers financing on some of their parts. And I wouldn't mind a supercharger kit for this thing. And so I looked that up, and I told her about it, and I'm like, I could get something like that for, relatively cheap on finance, and I'd have speed parts on my car. And she's like, well, we're already looking into solar. Yeah. She's like, let's get that settled, figure out where we are after that, and we'll go from there one way or another. But she didn't have a problem with it. It was just she wants to make sure our payments are less than our electric bill is going to be, and she don't want to get into financial trouble. But there's a distinct possibility this thing will at least be painted this year. The clear coat's coming off of it pretty bad. There's no rust, but the paint's faded real bad where the clear's off of it. And when I drove it to it, I actually cannonballed this thing, loose term, but I went from central Kentucky to Marietta, Georgia, which is right outside of Atlanta proper, and back in a day, and I did it with 2 kids. I stopped for breakfast, and I stopped to pick up some family down there and load them up and visit and meet their boyfriend, and then come back home. So I have put some seat time in this thing, and I forget where I was going with that, but anyway, there's a distinct possibility that this thing might be getting a little faster. Oh, I remember where I was going. When I was doing that drive, once the sun came up that morning, I'm literally watching parts of the clear coat fluttering in the interstate breeze as I'm going down the road at 70 miles an hour, peeling off the hood, so the clear's coming off of it bad. So I eventually do want to get the thing resprayed. It's going to go back to factory colors. Mostly I'm going to do some different accents on it, on the spoiler, the fake hood scoop, and either do away with the hockey stripes or paint them different colors. But nothing wild. But she's okay with the fact that I might be adding 150 horsepower to the tire on this car. And I've just got a cool woman. I remember it was funny how her and I met. My wife and I, we used to be co-workers. We worked at different offices of the same company, essentially. But there was woman that worked with my wife in the other office, and she was an older woman, a widow, and just, I like her. And she's just fun to hang out with. Well, at the time, I was engaged to another woman, and I know this is going to sound way worse than it actually is, but I would just go over and eat my lunch and visit with this other woman. You know, go over there and talk to her once, twice a week, just, you know, hey, what you doing, what's going on? We'd hang out at church outside of work, and so it was just nice to visit with her and have lunch together. And my wife was kind of quiet when I was around, outside of, you know, necessary business talk. And one time she said, "You never come over to have lunch with me?" And I'm like, "Well, would you want to have lunch?" She's like, "Yeah, I don't have any friends here. I just moved back from North Dakota." Cool. Well, let's go have lunch sometime. So we went out and had lunch. We get talking about life and things that have happened, and, you know, just kind of where we are in general. And she was in a dating relationship with a guy, had just gotten divorced, and she was in a dating relationship with a guy, and it was not a healthy relationship. And I'm like, wow, I'm surprised you're putting up with that. You know, you just got divorced. Why are you putting up with a relationship that makes you unhappy in all these ways? She kind of cocked her head saying, I never thought about it that way. And I was engaged, and I had some misconceptions about this woman and about marriage at the time. And talking to her, and said, wow, why are you putting up with this? You know, that's, you know, she threw my own advice right back at me. And long story short, both of us ended up finding ourselves single rapidly because we had a new perspective on things from people that weren't, you know, like family, that, oh, she's not good enough for you, he's not good enough for you. You know, this was an unbiased friend that had nothing to gain from their advice. And both of us ended up single and started dating. And ended up marrying. And it was a very interesting way to meet someone. And the best part about it is neither one of us were expecting to find the other one. Matter of fact, I was rapidly approaching my wedding date, and the closer it got, the more antsy I became, and the less happy I got with the way things were in mine and my ex's dating relationship. But I said all that to say that there is no way my ex would have been okay with this. Case in point, a car that I had 2.5 years ago was a car that I bought when my wife and I very first started dating. I'd seen this car a year prior. It had come in on trade-in out at the dealership I worked at. My ex and I were together, and I'm like, man, that's just sharp. That looks nice. I like that. Went out, took it on a test drive, and I loved it. It was comfortable. It was quick. It had more room than the car I had at the time. It was a 2-door convertible, so it was a little more practical. This was a 4-door sports sedan. I loved it. Like, man, I'd really like to trade for this. It's got, you know, buttons mine doesn't have, and it's nicer. It's built better than what I had. It's lower mile than what I had. And I'm like, I'd like to do this. And I talked to my fiance, we were still engaged at that point, about it. And she's, no, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that. So I let it slip away. Well, fast forward, it had come back in on trade-in, and I had just started dating my wife, and I seen it, and I'm like, hey, what do you think about this? She's like, it's your money, do whatever the world you want. And so I sent out a text message to the used car guy, and I'm like, hey, is that the car that we had a year ago? He goes, yep, it is. I'm like, how many more miles are on it? He's like, 10,000. checks out, I'll buy it. It checked out. I bought it that day, and she never told me how to spend my money when we were dating, and she's been okay with me spending money so long as it doesn't interfere with taking care of the kids and obligations as a family, which I see as highly reasonable. But she's definitely a cool woman. I love her to pieces. So I'm glad she's okay. That episode that she had with her heart yesterday really had me concerned. I was really moving, heading to the hospital. I actually pulled it up on Google. The ambulance and I had very similar distance and time drives, and coming from opposite directions. And I may or may not have beat the ambulance there. And I didn't have sirens and lights and permission legally to do stuff like that, but it may or may not have happened. So I was definitely concerned about her. I'm glad she's okay. I actually tried recording this video a second ago. She called me while I was recording it, and I decided not to do it too harder. And I actually got to see her. We stopped at a gas station so I could get a hug and a kiss, because she works days, I work nights. And she was heading into work. She's feeling good. She's doing good. She picked her car up from work technically yesterday afternoon, but I'm on night shift, so everything's goofy to me. And drove home. I dropped her off at her work. I drove past her work on my way to work. But she picked her car up, so she drove herself into work. She's feeling okay and doing fine. And then later today, when I wake up, she'll be home, and she's going to drive me over to pick up my car from the dealership because it is done again. So hopefully it doesn't flash a goofy error light and pull the same kind of stunt that it did the last time I picked it up. I drove it for about 2 weeks, and I lost all power. The thing makes most of its power on boost. It's a very small engine running fairly high boost for a stock engine, and it would build no boost, so it makes no power. It was the slowest thing I'd ever driven. I drove it back home, let it sit for a couple days, drove to the dealership, ran fine, and they hooked it up to diagnostic tools. And short version of the story is I got another transmission. So I've had an oil pump drive belt, oil pump tensioner. I had them put the cam belt on it because they were already into the timing cover when they did the oil pump on that thing. Picked it up, drove for 2 weeks, transmission went out. So the extended warranty, I got very fortunate. It definitely paid for itself. If it had happened 16,000 miles later, I would have been on the hook for thousands of dollars in repair bills. So anyway, all that stuff that happened, I'm just hoping the thing's reliable for another couple of years so I can get the silly thing paid off or paid down enough I can get out of it. Right now, due to the rate that I put miles on cars, I am wasted in that thing. Anyway, I reckon that's enough of me, folks. Y'all stay safe. Thanks for tuning in.